sin, repentance, and God's mercy. The life of King David, who is considered to be one of the most complicated and well-liked individuals in the Bible, is a perfect example of the conflict that exists between human imperfection and divine grace. A spiritual journey that illuminates the nature of sin, the sincerity of repentance, and the infinite depths of God's grace. His story is not simply a biography of an ancient ruler. Rather, it is a spiritual journey that discloses these things. From his humble origins as a shepherd kid to his rise to the position of Israel's greatest king, David's life exemplifies how God works using imperfect persons to accomplish his eternal purposes. The victories that David achieved began a long time before he ascended to the throne of Israel. When David was a young man, he confronted Goliath, the Philistine giant who had rendered Israel's army crippled with dread. David's confidence in God was constant throughout the entire encounter. David, armed with little more than a sling, 5 smooth stones, and a profound trust in the Lord, defeated the powerful warrior, demonstrating that faith in God wins over physical might or the chances of the world. His rise to popularity on a national scale was precipitated by this occurrence, which also marked the beginning of a lengthy and complicated journey that was replete with both divine favor and human struggle. David, as he climbed to fame, became a successful warrior under King Saul, during which time he won wars and earned the admiration of the people. Saul's anger, however, eventually evolved into fury, which resulted in David being forced into years of exile and poverty. For the duration of this time period, David's character was put to the test, and despite being presented with the opportunity to kill Saul, he continued to demonstrate self-control and regard for the anointed of God. As a result of these tests, he became more refined and exhibited a profound integrity and dependence on God. David was anointed king over Judah and ultimately over all of Israel, fulfilling the earlier promise that God had made via the prophet Samuel. This occurred after Saul passed away that year. After David was crowned king, his reign was characterized by a series of military successes and the consolidation of the nation over time. He triumphed over Jerusalem, establishing it as the governmental and spiritual capital of Israel, and he brought the Ark of the Covenant into the city with a great deal of jubilation. This deed was a representation of his intention to center the kingdom around the presence and law of God with the kingdom. David was also responsible for establishing a royal administration, implementing strategic warfare to defend Israel's boundaries, and bringing peace and prosperity to a nation that had previously been split. Despite the fact that they were written during times of both joy and sadness, his psalms established a powerful legacy of worship, honesty, and connection with God, and they shaped the spiritual life of Israel for years to come. However, despite all of these achievements, David was not immune to experiencing failure. When he was at the pinnacle of his authority, he experienced his biggest moral collapse. David remained in Jerusalem during a period of time when it was common for rulers to get involved in conflict. In the evening, he was standing on his rooftop when he witnessed Bathsheba taking a bath. He was filled with longing. David summoned her, committed adultery, and then attempted to cover up the pregnancy that developed as a result of his actions by bringing Uriah back from the battlefield. This was done despite the fact that David was aware that she was the wife of Uriah, one of his devoted troops. David was able to organize Uriah's murder by placing him at the front of the battle lines and telling his commander to withdraw support. Uriah's refusal to sleep with his wife was a demonstration of solidarity with his fellow soldiers who were still engaged in the conflict. David was successful in his scheme, and he married Bathsheba as a direct result. David's life entered a dark chapter as he committed a series of wicked acts, including murder, lust, deceit, and misuse of power against others. In spite of this, God, who is always vigilant and just, dispatched the prophet Nathan to confront him. A parable that Nathan told David about a wealthy man who stole the only lamb that a poor man owned inflamed David's sense of justice and provoked his fury. Nathan relayed the story to David. As soon as Nathan made the statement, "You are the man," David was quickly found guilty. In contrast to Saul, who dodged responsibility and rationalized his conduct, David admitted his wrongdoing without offering any justifications. "I have sinned against the Lord." He began the process of restoration with this moment of brokenness that he experienced. The petition of David for repentance, which is found in Psalm 51, is one of the most striking confessions that can be found elsewhere in the Bible. Not only does he beg for pardon, but he also insists on undergoing a makeover on the inside. "Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me," he says, realizing that the corruption of his heart can only be healed through the intervention of the supernatural. He is aware that genuine contrition lies beyond the performance of rituals. Rather, it is about having a broken spirit and a heart that is contrite. Because they provide an example for how to approach God in times of moral failing, the words of David have resounded with generations of believers. While God did forgive David, he did not absolve him of the responsibility for the consequences of his conduct. The passing of the child that was born to David in Bathsheba brought David a great deal of anguish. His household descended into chaos and tragedy as a result of his actions. An assault committed by his son Amnon on his half-sister Tamar resulted in Absalom taking Amnon's life as a form of retribution. Absalom eventually led a rebellion against David, which resulted in David being forced to flee Jerusalem and subjected to disgrace and loss. Nathan's prophecy that "the sword shall never depart from your house" was fulfilled as a result of these events, which tore at the fabric of David's household and kingdom. Still, David did not turn away from God in spite of all the suffering and turmoil that he was experiencing. Instead, he embraced his sorrow and expressed his anguish with psalms that conveyed both agony and trust in the midst of his suffering. It is not the lack of sin that distinguishes David from many other biblical heroes. Rather, it is his response to sin that sets him apart. On multiple occasions, David went back to God with a humble attitude and an open heart. David accepted responsibility and sought the mercy of the Lord even in his latter years, when he was confronted with more challenges, such as the census that he took against the command of God, which resulted in a plague that killed a great number of people. The example of his life demonstrates that a heart that is really penitent can find favor with God, even after making serious mistakes. As the character of God is revealed in the Bible, this principle provides the foundation for comprehending the character of God, which is described as being slow to wrath, abundant in kindness, and eager to restore those who turn to him with integrity. Taking into consideration David's contrition and the mercy of God, a divine covenant was established. It was a covenant that would extend beyond David's rule in the present and point to the future. God made a promise that David's lineage would last for all of eternity and that from his families would arise a king whose dominion would last for all of eternity. Ultimately, this promise was realized in the person of Jesus Christ, who was born into the family of David and was descended from David. Therefore, the story of David is not only about his own personal redemption. Rather, it is intertwined with the greater narrative of God's intention to redeem the world via the ministry of the Messiah. At the end of the day, the life of King David is like a tapestry that is stitched with threads of glory and dishonor, dedication and disobedience, triumph and tears. He was a lovable monarch, a talented poet, a powerful warrior, and a flawed individual all at the same time. His life demonstrates that even those who are most gifted by God are not immune to feeling tempted and falling short of their goals. His story, however, teaches that there is no failure that is beyond the reach of God's forgiveness. This is the most significant lesson. Sincere repentance is the means by which even the most heinous sins can be confronted with the shining light of divine mercy. Therefore, David's legacy is not only found in his political accomplishments or artistic psalms. Rather, it is found in his willingness to confront his sins, genuinely lament over them, and hurl himself upon the mercy of God. Despite this, he continues to serve as a potent reminder that the most important thing is not the flawlessness of our record, but rather the posture of our hearts in front of God. Every person who has committed a sin can find hope in the narrative of David, which teaches them that forgiveness comes with confession and that restoration comes with forgiveness. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.